Alright, hello. We are on episode 29, and this one's going to be about score and saving it to disk and loading it. We're going to make some changes to the score system in general to make it more interesting, but the main sort of technical thing that we haven't done before is just to save information to your hard drive and load it again. There's a bunch of different ways of doing that, and the one we're going to use is the most cheap and cheerful. I'll go through all of them once you've seen how easy this one is, because it will sell you on it, I think. So, the first thing we're going to do, right now our player actually holds the score variable. Since our scoring is going to get a bit more involved now, I think it makes sense to give it a separate dedicated score manager. And I'm going to put that on, we have this score element of our canvas. I'm just going to, same way we did with the alarm manager lives on the alarm panel. The score manager is going to live on the score panel. And so I'm just going to try and add a script called score manager, and it doesn't know it because I haven't made it yet, so I'm just going to say enter, and that will be the default name for the script, and it will create it. And I think the first thing I'm going to do is we'll give it its own score variable. Seems like a good start. So public int score, and then that the player's score, if I just delete that, what breaks? We should see a little red mark here saying, oh, this thing refers to score. Well, I'm going to take that thing as well. I'm a little bit concerned that my cursor just changed to something that I don't understand there. I'm going to delete all this because we don't need a start or an update yet. And so now the increased score function lives on score manager. And I could go hunting for where increased score was referenced previously. I could have looked it up before I deleted it, but I'd rather just go back to Unity and see what it complains about. This error, if I double click it, takes me straight to antique behavior. Antique behavior wants to increase the score on the player. Well, that is now on our score manager. We need a way to reference the score manager, don't we? So let's go into references, and as we did with all other managers, we just declare it like this, score manager, and we'll call it score manager with a lowercase s. Variables start with lowercase, types start with uppercase. And then on score manager itself, it's going to be on awake. References.score manager equals this. So now we have a way to reference it, and let's get back to antique behavior where we were trying to do that, and change it to alarm manager. Nope. Score manager. Is anything else broken if we go back to Unity? Was there anywhere else that we increased the score from? I feel like antiques are the only things that give us score right now, aren't they? Taking a long time to realise that there's no other errors, but there are no other errors. Okay, cool. So we've moved our score functionality. And the thing we want to implement now, the reason we want to save anything to disk at all is we want to store your high score. So I want you to know how well you're doing relative to how well you've ever done, the best you've ever done. So that's obviously just a public int high score. When would that be increased? I think it should be when the player dies, and I'm going to just create a function for them to call. So it'll just be, I'll call it update high score. We could call it save high score, but we don't actually know if we're going to be saving anything at all, because if we didn't get a better score than the high score, we don't need to save anything. So this will say, in fact we can write this right now, it will be if score is greater than high score, then high score equals score. And then later we'll save it to disk here. So for now, I just wanted that function to exist so that in the player behavior, we can have it update the score when we die. And for that, I'm going to use onDestroy. Now, and I'll just type references.scoremanager.update high score. That works. I just want to note a few cautions with onDestroy. I might have talked about it before, but just a reminder if I did. onDestroy runs anytime this game object is destroyed, and that includes when you exit play mode. So one of the pitfalls here is you shouldn't ever create anything in onDestroy. We don't use this for our explosions. You know, when an enemy dies, we don't create the explosion in onDestroy, I hope I'm right in saying, because you shouldn't. I believe the health system does that when we run out of health. So yeah, be aware with OnDestroy that this is not only going to trigger when we run out of health, it's also going to trigger when we close down the game. And Unity hates it if closing down the game creates game objects, because obviously it's trying to clean up the scene and you're creating more mess as it goes. So we're not creating any objects, that's fine. Although I guess we should be careful that this script never creates any objects. I'm allowing it to be on destroy rather than trying to figure out how we would work it into our health system, because our health system is the only thing that truly knows that we were killed by damage and this is a normal death. It's not just being cleaned up by Unity. So we could try and work it into there, but I think it'd be complicated to make player behavior and health system talk to each other. Right now they have no interactions, which is really cool. They don't need to know anything about each other. So I'm letting it be on destroy because if you shut down Unity or the game closes in some way, even if it's unexpected, do we want your high score to be saved? Sure, if possible. If you're currently on a score that's higher than the one you've ever had before, we should save that, because you can't lose score in this game. You did get that score, it's legit. So yeah, that's why I'm happy putting it on destroy, but I wanted to make sure you're aware of the pitfalls there. That probably works already. Let me just run it and check we didn't break anything, and that I remember to save every file. So we won't see anything at all because I didn't put any way of actually seeing what the high score is. So let's do that next. Here, where the score is in the canvas, I'm going to create a new Text Mesh Pro, and let's move the whole score thing up a bit. And this very ugly bit of text is going to, I'm just going to align it all manually. Using this, if you're not seeing these rect things, remember it's this little button you click over here, rect tool. It's very useful for UI stuff. And it's all overflowing horribly, so I'm going to click the auto size button. And I'm actually going to make 2 bits of text, I think. So I'll get this how I want it, and then in fact, maybe we'll just make it about 15. And I want it to say something like best, and then a high number. So, but I don't really want the code to have to write this word best. Like if we wanted to update that text now, we've got to send not just the score, but the word best colon. And writing strings like that in code is fine, you can do it, but usually it's better practice to have it exposed in the inspector like this and just be, that's kind of a visual decoration kind of element. You want to be able to change it just in the scene view, and not have to go in editing code to change the styling of something. Yeah, I'm not too fussy about how this looks at the moment, so I'm just going to duplicate it. And then, so one of these will just be the word best, and the other one will be the actual score. And that one is going to not have the word best and just have the score, and so it should be right aligned. Yeah, and then we can update the number with just code, and the styling we can update here. So this is the one that actually is the high score text, and I don't care that this one's just called text because it isn't important. One other thing I'm going to do while I'm here is this is probably going to overlap with the alarm panel now. I think this one, for some reason, its width has got set to 0. Actually, I'll flag this up. Sometimes Unity loves to make things go to width 0, and in this case, this is an instance of a prefab, so I'm just going to right-click on that and say revert, and it'll go to what the value is in the prefab. And yeah, it overlaps a bit. So we can just move it up a bit. But actually, I'm going to move the whole thing all the way up to the top of the screen. In fact, let me ensure it's at the top of the screen, so I'm going to change the anchor. This is on the alarm panel, and I'm going to hold down Shift, but not Alt in this case, to make it relative to the top left of the screen, and then I'll just decrease that Y value so that it's coming from the top. And then to make the alert pips actually appear at the top, that is all governed by our vertical layout group here, and it's set to put everything in the lower center. I want it now to be in the upper center, and now our alarm is in the top left, so we can keep it nice and separated. Alright, so now we have, a text element exists for the best score, but we don't have a reference to it yet, and all our references to score text are in canvas behavior, so I'm just going to create a new one called high score text. And then while I'm here, let's go into score manager, and when a high score is updated, we should do references.canvas.highscore text. It's not just text, it's text.text equals high score. And will it make me... Yeah, it's going to make me do dot to string, because it's a string. Sometimes you don't have to do that, sometimes you do. That's my advice on that. Yeah, so the reason it's dot text there is this is the name of a... In fact, let's go to its definition. Text mesh pro GUI element, like a component. And a component is not a string. A component is a thing that has many properties, one of which is a string. Is that all we needed? I've got to set the reference in Unity, haven't I? I score text, and now let's just see if that works. I have to get some kind of score first. Score 1. And oh, the best reads 34,000 because that's the placeholder text I wrote in. That is awfully loud on my end. I don't know what it's like on yours. Windows tried to update itself in between the last episode and this, so I think that's why. Anyway, the best score is 1, and my score is 1, so it got updated, so that's good. If I click New Game, though, look what happens. Best goes back to 34,000, and my score is back to 0. That's because nothing is saved to disk, and when we start a new game, we just really start a new game. We throw the whole thing out, and we essentially clicking the New Game button does the same thing as me getting out of play mode and going back into play mode. So we lose everything right now. So first thing I'm going to do is fix that high score text so that the default is just 0. So when the game starts, it'll be 0, and then when we load anything into it, it'll be updated with a real figure. And now, we're going to save some actual information to disk. An exciting moment for everyone. It's really easy. So, here's where we said we'd save it to disk. Thank you, Past Tom, for telling me where. It's called player prefs. And we're going to... Is it set int? Yes. We're going to set an integer, because our score is an integer. And when I open this bracket, it wants 2 bits of information from me. It's saying it wants a string for the key and an integer for the value. So integer for the value, we know what that is. String for the key. A key is a word or a series of text that identifies this piece of information. So I'm literally just going to say high score and high score. In fact, I strongly recommend this. Anytime you're saving a variable, make the key the exact name of the variable as it stands right now. Obviously later on you might rename the variable, and if you do that, don't bother updating this text, it doesn't matter that much, but it's just really useful to remember what is what. Don't give it 2 different names here because you'll just make trouble for yourself. Now we've set that int, but nothing has been saved to disk yet. Player prefs is sort of like this thing that's being held in memory, and then at any time you can say player prefs.save, and it'll actually get saved to disk. In this case we want to do that right away. So that is now saved to disk, and when do we want to load it? We want to load it when on startup, I think. I actually am going to do this on start, not awake. And it's going to be playerprefs.getInt, and we type in, what is the name, what key did we give to this variable that's called high score? I know, it was high score, because we have a good system. That doesn't do anything by itself, that is going to return that value, but we need to actually assign that to high score. So high score equals, go get the int. So get int, you don't have to type load or anything, it's going to go, it knows to look in player prefs and it will find the information that's been loaded there. So player prefs is a very simple built-in way of saving, as you can see from the name, they're thinking of it for player preferences, like, do you want your mouse inverted or whatever. Some people advise against using it for saving things like high scores because they say, and they're right, that it's not encrypted. I agree that it's not encrypted. I don't agree that it matters because we're not making a competitive multiplayer game. We're not even making something with leaderboards. The data is going to be stored in plain text. The user can go in and edit it if they like. They could enter whatever high score they want, and they can take a screenshot of that and say, hey, look, I got this amazing high score. I don't care. Well done. Most of my games just store things in plain text. The only time we didn't store everything in plain text was Heat Signature, and that was only because Heat Signature does some Steam friends sharing stuff, so your items can pop up on your friends' games, and so we kind of didn't want, if you just were messing around of your own volition and made some crazy item that breaks the game, like literally makes the game crash, which is not hard to do, you know, I don't care if you ruin your own game doing that, but I don't want that to passively spread to your friends, perhaps without you even realizing that's happening. So we did just obfuscate the text in heat signature to make it a little bit harder to do that, and we do some other things to make sure that that's less of an issue. But yeah, if it's not going to hurt anyone's experience, I don't think, why do you want to encrypt it? But for the sake of balance, I will tell you about the other methods. So serialization is the one that's often recommended. I don't really understand it, so I can't teach you that. I looked at the tutorial and still just, it seems like a lot of work and a lot of faff. And it's a sort of code pattern that does get used in more professional contexts, and it's sort of generally well thought of. It's just a bit beyond me. I've had it explained to me many times, and I still don't like feel it, you know. I can understand little bits of it, but yeah, like code only really clicks for you when you see like, oh, I see, well, that's hugely useful, and what the problem is with all the other systems. That's when you'll actually remember it, I find. So because I can't do it myself, and I also can't tell you why it's that valuable, we're not going to teach that. Stream Writer is a thing that I've used in the past. That's what I've done in Floating Point and a few other projects, which is just a sort of cheap and cheerful way of saving information. It's just like player prefs, really. It's a little bit more code to write. The advantage is that you can save it to different files. So you can say, okay, let's save all this to your preferences file, let's save this to your high score file, let's save this to some other things, and those will be different text files. And you can do things like saving custom levels to different file names using that. That's not too hard to learn, but I'm not going to teach you here because I already taught you a way of doing everything we need to do. And then lastly, once my save needs got a bit more complicated on Tactical Breach Wizards, I went and got this plugin called Easy Save, which it costs $69, I think, in Canadian anyway. So it's not free, is the downside of that, but it is really easy to use. It's about as easy to use as this. It really is. You just say, like, here's what I want to call it, here's the data I want to store, and then go get it. And that one is encrypted. It tells you that you can choose whether the data is encrypted or not, but actually I found when I set it to not be encrypted, it still was encrypted, which is actually kind of annoying for me, because as I just said, I really like my data to be in plain text where possible. The other perk of having data in plain text, unless there's a really good reason not to, is it's really friendly to modders. They can mess around with your game. Sometimes people can make a mod for your game just by changing the data that you let them save. Okay, so that should all work. Let's actually test it and see if I'm correct. So our best score is 0, which is correct. Let's use a rail Uzi at close range. Kind of forgot what a rail Uzi was. Why didn't I do anything that was going to get me any score? That would have been a good start, wouldn't it? Steal an antique. That's 1, 2, 3, 4. And now I actually want to die. And be nudged. I wanted to die and be nudged. So, I mean, I would expect our best to say 5 right now, wouldn't you? But it doesn't. No, not getting updated. Okay. That's odd, because that functionality was working, right? We had that much working. Oh, did I update the text? High score text is the right thing. Yes, it is. Is it to do with... Oh, I know what it is. We don't update the actual on-screen value. So in the back end, it may have been getting updated, but in the actual thing that we saw, it wasn't. Not 100% satisfied with that as an explanation, because we still should have seen it when after it died, shouldn't we? On death, we update the high score. Oh, unless... Anyway, let's test this and just see if it sheds any light. I'll also look at my notes, because I wrote down some common problems here. Ooh. Oh. Okay. Alright, I'm going to stop because I've just understood what happened. And it's a surprising thing, and you might not encounter it because... okay, I was right. That's why we weren't seeing the... That's why it was 0 on startup, is because on startup we loaded the score, but we didn't update the canvas. And then the explanation for why didn't it update when we died, that's because in that situation we hadn't actually beaten our high score. And that's only because I did a practice run of this, so I've already used player prefs to save data before, and I saved a large score, and so we didn't beat that. So if you didn't understand that, don't worry about it too much. Basically, I'm actually going to have to figure out how to clear player prefs, because I don't know where the file is to delete it. Let me just see, is there a player prefs... Oh, delete key, here we go. So you don't do this, I'm just doing this once because I have some garbage data on my system that I want to get rid of. So obviously that's not going to work because it's going to get it right after it deletes it. Don't know if it'll crash, but I'll comment that out for now anyway. And then we should see that should clear it. Oh, hang on, no, I do want to delete that line. Yes, once you start saving data to disk, things get real tricky with yeah, between different versions of the game. You'll get garbage data from an old version of the game that affecting the new version of the game, and that's a pain. Oh, hey, we have... Okay. Spotted some other problems too. Anyway, the best score is now 4. We're seeing that on death correctly, and the key thing is when I click New Game, best is still 4. So the data has been saved, and it's been loaded at the right time. The other thing I've just noticed is we got way too many alarm pips, haven't we? And that's because I enabled this one. This one should be off when the game starts. It's not way too many, it's 1 too many. Alright, cool. We have saved data to disk and loaded it successfully. The next thing I want to do is a bounty system. So the idea of this is I want to incentivize you to kill the enemies as fast as possible. I think all the decisions about what weapons to use and how to use them and when to spend your ammo and everything get way more interesting if there's a reason to kill things as quickly as you can. And I think a good way to do that is to randomly assign some enemies to have a bounty on them, and that bounty is going to tick down over time. So you want to kill those enemies as fast as possible. And it's also, making it a random enemy adds another dimension of like, okay, now this enemy matters more than that enemy. And so there's extra strategy there of like, how do I get my damage on that one if he's like in the back of a mob or something. So, a couple of things to kind of tweak to fit that. First thing I'm going to do before we start on that actually is the antique behavior. When we increase the score, currently we give you 1 point for an antique. I'm going to make it 200. I'm thinking of score more like money now, and we could put like a dollar or a pound sign in front of it all. I did that in one of my early practices of this. This episode has taken quite a lot of work to practice and figure it out. It ends up adding a lot of like hassle to your code to do something like that. So we're not going to do that in this particular instance. But we are going to add bounties to enemies, and we're going to put it on their health system. It's going to be ultimately a bit of text that hovers above each enemy, and we could create a whole new object for that, but actually we already have an object that follows enemies around, right? It's their health bar. So we're just going to add the text to the health bar, and then the health system is going to manage the bounty. It might not be your first thought that when you want to add bounties to enemies that it should go on the health system. There's a few reasons to do it that way. The main one is that, like I said earlier, the health system is the only thing that truly knows when we died from being killed. Sounds kind of weird, but it distinguishes between just being destroyed because the game's being cleaned up or we moved on to a new level or whatever. We don't want your money to increase for that, do we? We only want it to increase if it was legitimately killed. So that's a good reason to put it on the health system, and it's actually quite a natural place for it to live because it means we can assign a bounty to anything. It doesn't have to be an enemy. So if we wanted like a big box of cash or something, and it's just a box in the level, it's got health and it gives you money when it dies, our bounty system would already support that. So on our health system, let's just do a public int bounty. I'll leave it at that for now, and let's find our health bar. In fact, we've got a reference to a health bar right here. I'm just going to control click it. In our health bar, I think we want a public text mesh. It's not in our vocabulary yet, so I'm going to do Alt and Enter and see if it will help me out. Nope. I'm going to write it completely correctly, and then it will. ProUGUI is the full name, and when I can't find it, I hit Alt Enter, and it knows that if we added using TM Pro to the top of this file, then it would know what we mean. So it's done that. This will be bounty text, and then let's go create that in the health bar prefab, which will be in here somewhere. Let's say it's there. This is another thing we made in a cheap and cheerful way that means that the actual base object is the background bar, and now that it's going to have multiple components to it, I don't want that to be the case. I want there to be a separate text element and it's possible we might want to rescale, resize that background bar, and we don't want to change the text every time we do that. So I'm going to do our usual trick for how you solve this, how you unpick this mess, is on the health bar and do Control-C, Control-V, so that now there's a copy of the health bar as a child of itself. That's what we want it to be, really. We want this to be the real one. I'm going to delete this filled part, that's no longer relevant. And then this base object is, we could almost call it like unit UI or something. And it's going to rename the file, that's fine, we can do that. And in this base object, I don't want an image because it's no longer the visual component. This is now the visual component. Keep the image on that and remove the health bar from that. And then we should find on the unit UI the two references that the health bar wants to both the background, which is this part, and the filled part, which is that part, need to be updated. And now bounty text. Let's create some. Going to be right-click UI text. I tried to. Okay. It looked like I clicked text there, but it's giving me a text mesh pro GUI, so that's fine. It's going to be another horror show until we resize it. Let's turn on auto size, and oh my god, why is it so huge? Put it over here. Auto size is doing no good at all because it's got a vast minimum. Okay, it's here now, and I'm gonna have it aligned to the base here. Boy, that didn't work. That's not the base, is it? But I don't care. I am curious though if that's in the extra settings or something. Nope, just weird. I'm gonna make it bold, and it's gonna be a value something like 100. So let's also center it. I guess there's no reason to make it any smaller than it has to be height-wise. Yeah. And I'm concerned that... Oh, first of all, I'm going to give it like a sort of goldish colour to signify value. And I'm worried that you won't be able to read it on a light background because it's light text. You never want to make too many assumptions about what kind of colour it's going to be up against. And there is a way to fix that. So it's tempting with... We're using this Liberation Sans font, and if I go down here, there is an outline thing, and I can check that, and I can add an outline, I can make it really thick. The problem is, by doing that, I have changed every bit of text in the game. All of our text uses this font, and when I change it here, I am changing the font itself for everywhere it's used. So I don't want to do that. But luckily, this font comes with the built-in, just below where you set the font itself, there's a drop-down list here, and one of them is outline. I can do that. That gives us an outline. I actually think it's a bit thin. I can change it now, because all I'm doing now is changing every instance of every place that it's used with an outline, and this is the first time we've used it with an outline. I'm actually going to change the colour of the outline too. Can I... Looked like it was going to let me colour pick it. So that would be pointless, but if we make it darker... Yeah, it's just a bit more harmonious, I think. Alright, so now we've got a value. I don't mind leaving it as 100, like having a meaningful value there, because it will be turned off if the unit doesn't have a value. So now let's write that code. The health bar, no, not the health bar, the health system is what we want next. Let me pin both of these. If I haven't talked about pinning before, it's a way of just keeping tabs next to each other. Yeah, let's do... We've got a bounty, and I suppose one thing we could do on startup is set the bounty text to our bounty. So my health bar dot bounty text dot text equals bounty to string. Then on death, yeah, I guess we'll just test the simplest version of this. This is the place where we actually die, and I think in fact I should say this. This is where we die, and before we destroy the game object, let's do references.scoreManager.increase score by bounty. So now everyone who has a bounty will give us that many points when they die. And that's all we need just to test that this is working, I think. No, I'll do one more thing, which is in update, I will say if bounty greater than 0, then my health bar dot bounty text dot enabled, nope, just enabled, is true, and else we should turn it off. So if we have a bounty of 0, we don't want to see that display at all. I keep thinking, I don't know why, I've done this twice today. I've tried to write disabled equals true instead of enabled equals false. So that should just be a basic bounty system. Let me see if it works. Nope, because I didn't set... Did I not set the reference? No, I didn't. I was right there when I made it, but I didn't set it. Okay, so now I want to set off an alarm and see some enemies and see if they have anything about their head. No, they don't. Is that because they have no bounty? That would be why. So I'm going to go into the Swarmer and give them a bounty. Remember, the Swarmer is the parent of the Tough Swarmer and the Fast Swarmer. So when I give this a bounty, all the other Swarmers should get a bounty as well. But we can still tweak those individually if we want to. So do that again. Yeah, there we go. 100, 100, 100. It's actually pretty big, isn't it? We might want to reduce that. But it's nice and readable. Well, not when it overlaps that much. Okay, cool. Wait, sorry, I forgot to check. Did that actually give us the score? Let me get a better weapon, because that was kind of frustrating. Yeah, look at our score go up. That's great. Cool. So that works. But right now, everyone gives you a bounty. So let's fix that. Public float chance of bounty. And then on... I think we can just do it in start. How do we do a chance of something not happening? If we do random value is greater than chance of bounty, this check will pass a lot if the chance of bounty is small. So this is the chance we won't have a bounty. So basically, if a random value is bigger than our chance, then erase our bounty. So we're probably going to have like 20% of enemies have a bounty. So if a random value between 0 and 1 is greater than 0.2, then erase our bounty. In 80% of cases, erase our bounty. I think that's all we need to do. I suppose... Yeah, I don't mind having that line there, even if the bounty is 0. It's not necessary if it's 0, but it's correct. And then let's actually tweak these. So a Swarmer will have a 0.2 chance of a 100 bounty. And then a Tough Swarmer, let's give it a 200 bounty, because they're tougher to kill. I think we'll leave the chance the same. And then a Fast Swarmer could have a 200 bounty, but there's only a 0.1 chance of them having it, because they are easy to kill anyway. In fact, maybe it's 150, because they are really easy to kill. So, I don't think we even need to test that, do we? Well, let's scale the text down and then also test it, and we'll see how that feels. Probably still too big. Okay, that looks good. Yeah, now that there's not so many of them, that looks kind of nice to me. And there's none of those Fast Swarmers. We made it pretty unlikely on Fast Swarmers, so that's not too surprising. Alright, cool, that works. Next thing to do is have it decay over time. What I didn't do was make a note of when I started this. Okay, we're 34 minutes in. I did so many of these episodes without realising you can just look in OBS to see how long you've been recording, which makes sense. Yeah, I want it to decay over time, and so publicly what I want to set is seconds for bounty to decay. I had a way better variable name for this before. Yeah, I think that's long, but it's specific. And we're going to need another variable for this. As far as I can tell, there's no way to do this with just one variable unless you make it a very unintuitive thing, because what we really want is a decay rate. That's what we're going to work with. But setting a decay rate in the inspector is a bit like, it's very abstract. Like how many money's worth of bounty should it lose per second isn't what you intuitively think in terms of. You think in terms of, I want it to have a 200 bounty, and after 10 seconds it should be completely gone. I can't even tell you off the top of my head what that decay rate is, even though the numbers are really simple. Those are just really simple numbers, but I can't be sure that I wouldn't miss a factor of 10 or something. So all I'm going to do is in start, actually, only if we do get a bounty will I set a decay rate, and decay rate will be the bounty divided by the time it takes for the bounty to decay. Let me check that I'm right about that. So the decay rate for any given duration of bounty that we want, the higher the bounty is, the faster the decay rate needs to be for it to be gone by that time. And similarly, for any fixed amount of bounty, the higher the seconds we want to it to last for, the slower the decay rate. I hope that made sense. If not, just trust me. If the decay rate was 0, if the seconds to decay was 0, this would crash. That's one reason I'm only doing it if we actually have a bounty. In fact, that's not really the right check, is it? Let's be more clear about this. If seconds around to decay is, I'll just do not equal to 0. A negative value would be crazy, but it doesn't crash the crash unity. So we'll just check it's not 0 before we set a decay rate. And if that isn't set, decay rate will be 0, and we'll get weird results. So where should we do this? It should be an update. And actually, I think it should be, we've already got this check for if bounty is greater than 0. We only want to reduce the bounty if it's greater than 0, don't we? So it'll be reduced by decay rate times time.delta time. So, really? Is bounty an int? Yes, bounty is going to be a float, not an int. Because we're going to reduce it continuously. That is going to throw an error where we try and increase the score by bounty, because that wants an integer, but that's easy enough to fix. We can just do mathf dot floor to int. So floor to int means that if it's 1.1, it goes to 1. If it's 1.9, it also goes to 1. We ignore the decimal place. The reason I go for that is that after it's ticked down, like let's say the bounty's on $1, once it ticks down below 1, that's 0. We don't want to leave it as 1. You lose the remainder. It's a matter of taste really, but I just think that makes more sense. So yes, it's going to go down by the decay rate times time.delta time. Why do we need to multiply it by that? You have to do that for any kind of rate that happens over time. Basically, all of the variables we've used are in seconds. This is how much it should decay every second. Well, a second hasn't passed since update last ran. Update is running many times per second, and so we need to know that value. How long was it since the last update? So that should be it. Let me see what values we should give. So first I'm going to set one in Swarmer, because that will become the default for everyone. I'll set 20 seconds there. That's quite a long time, actually. Let me set 10 seconds there. And then for a tough Swarmer, it will be 20. And maybe for a fast Swarmer, it's 5, but I'll put it back up to 200, so it's nice and valuable. So if you can get them fast, you're richly rewarded. Sniper, Uzi shot. Still got a stray health pack lying in a level. We should delete that at some point. Okay. Oh, hang on. I'm not saying that go down at all. Let me test something. I shot it and I got no... And then it disappeared. Okay, it is decaying, but the text isn't updating. That's the thing. So... The bounty text being set in start. I don't know why I was setting it in start, really. I think it should be set in update. And that should be all we have to do, actually. Here we go. Oh, there's some juicy ones. Okay, that is too many decimal places. But I like the values and the decay rate actually feel pretty good. And that made killing those things a lot more satisfying. It was great that I was being rewarded for it. So the fact that it's going to a decimal place means we'd do the same thing, basically. We would do the math f floor to int thing before setting it. But since we're doing that in 2 places now and it's kind of a mess, let us do just make a function for it. Int rounded bounty. I shouldn't say rounded because rounding is a different thing to floor. I'll just say bounty as int. And that's just going to return this. Mathf floor to int bounty. And now that will go in there. And it will also go in this place where we update the label. Be bounty as int instead of bounty. Hopefully that's it for the bounty system itself. Oh, have I stolen an antique since I did this system? Okay, cool. Those were 200. I get an easy shot. Oops. Okay, I killed them pretty fast, but I did see that was showing the correct value. Where's the other swarmers? There should be more swarmers in this. Oh, there. Oh, it's too late to see their values. Just start a new one. Okay, they're all taken down. All those taken down real fast. Yeah, I like this. This is good. Alright, cool. That all works. The last thing I want to do today, I did put 4 things here, but it's a bit much. We're just going to stop here at recent score text. So when you are getting score, when you net a bounty or you steal an antique, I think we can underscore that moment a bit better by showing you how much you just gained. So let's say you're a bit deeper into the game and you've got a score of like 3,791 and then it goes up to 3,952. When I tell you those figures like that, you can probably figure out how much you just gained, but when it's only one of those figures is on screen at any given time, you've got to go back in your short-term memory and figure out, wait, what was the value before? What did I just gain? Like, was what I just got a big win? Is a thing. And so, obviously, for an individual enemy, you can see its bounty above its head, and you know how much you got for that, assuming it still is what you last read at the time of its death. But if you're killing a whole swarm of them and there's loads of bounties in it, you want that all to stack up and just see, wait, how much did I just get in that big, slaughter? That will make it feel a lot better, I think. So that is recent score text, and I'm going to put that on the canvas right near the other score texts. I'm actually just going to get rid of the word score. In fact, I might just reuse this. It's going to look something like that. And I'm comfortable with just losing the word score because once you see that happening, I think you'll get that, oh, I just increased this number by doing this good thing. So it'll look a bit like that. I think I'll actually make it as big as it will go. Since it has no background, let's do that trick with the outline. I should find the outline value and color is the same as last time. And I'll call this recent score text. And the canvas is going to want a reference to it. Public text mesh GUI recent score text. Let's set that while I remember because I'm very bad at remembering that. Recent score text there. And now Score Manager is going to handle much of this. So Score Manager is going to need I don't think it actually needs to be public. Let's make it private, if I'm right. Recent score. What will be public is a seconds to show recent score, and then privately seconds since showing score. So that's what we'll compare it to. So perhaps I'll put that public value up top. So every time we gain score, I would like to increase score is down here. That's a bit weird to me. I'm going to move that up. Every time we gain score, I'd like to increase our recent score by that amount and set the seconds since showing score to 0. Then in update, which I don't think we have an update, so I'll create one, We will do seconds since showing score increased by time.delta time. That's not what I said. Now we've got a semicolon in space. And if the seconds since showing score is greater than or equal to the time... Wait, is it seconds to show score? Seconds to show score. Then what do we reset? We reset the recent score to 0. We don't reset seconds since showing score because this is not a thing that shows score. In fact, it's the opposite. It's going to get rid of the score. And so where will we control whether we show the recent score or not? It's going to be here. It's going to be, in fact, it's this very check, isn't it? If that is happening, then references.canvas.recent score text .enabled is false. And if this isn't true, why did enable just come out again? Can't do that when I want to do it. Then we'll set it to true. Yeah, that all makes sense. So if it's expired, reset the recent score and hide the score. If it isn't expired, then make sure we're showing the score. And, oh yeah, last thing to do is actually set the score text, right? We should do that when we increase the score. So here, recent score.text to recent score. In fact, it's going to be, I want a plus sign in front of it. So I'm going to do a plus in quote marks, then a plus out of quote marks, because we want to add these two, we want to, yeah, add the string to the number. And that will show it. I moved a bit quickly there. I hope that wasn't too quick. Maybe I should recap. Basically, when we increase the score, we're going to not only increase our total score, but also the recent score, which is going to start at 0. And we're going to remember that this is when we started showing it. This will obviously refresh. If you keep gaining score, we'll keep on showing that score on screen. And we show the total here. And then after that timer expires, we reset recent score back to 0 for next time, and we stop showing that bit of text. So the next question is how long to show it for, which is a score manager thing. Seconds to show recent score for, I think 2 is about right. So will all that work? Hopefully, yeah, that disappears right away because we know that wait, no, this isn't working, is it? So it's turned itself on now, but it's just showing 300, but that's not, I mean, I didn't even gain any score, did I? So now it's 2, oh my god, it's all backwards. That time it worked. Alright, I need to see all that again, because I didn't understand what just happened. Like, I could set this text to nothing, but it shouldn't be on, and it wasn't on, right? This is seconds since showing... Oh, I have got it backwards, haven't I? How long has it been since we showed the score is less than or equal to how long we're supposed to show the score for. That's not when you reset, that's when you show it. Apologies. So this is when it's expired. Still within... Yes, that makes sense. Let's just try that again then. God damn it. Okay, right, because it starts at 0. I mean, we could have some code that ensures it starts disabled. In fact, I will do that. So there's 2 ways to do this. I could just disable it in the inspector, just turn off recent score text, and then it would be off when the game starts. But I actually think that... should canvas behavior do it, or should... I think score manager is going to do it. Recent score text enabled equals false. That's not going to do it. That's not going to help. Okay, so the way we can do it is just set the seconds since showing score to be seconds to show recent score. What the hell am I talking about? I'm just going to change these, what kinds of variables these are to fix this. So I'm going to say recent score on screen for this many. Oh, bloody hell. The problem is both of the variables would have real similar names. Basically, I want one that is the norm. Let's call it default time to show recent score, and then seconds left to show recent score. I think also I didn't. Oh no, I did increase the time. Okay, so I didn't rename those. I just typed in new names, so everything's gone wrong. That's okay because since I changed what they mean as well, I do want to check every single time I've used them. So the default time to show recent score will set that in the inspector, and it will be 2. Seconds left to show recent score. Every time we do this, every time we increase the score, oh my god, I just typed in 2. Default time to show recent score. So every time we increase the score, the number of seconds we have left is the default time we set in the inspector. And then each tick we will decrease this, not increase it. And if this will make this if statement easy to understand. If seconds left to show recent score is greater than 0, i.e. there's some time left on the clock, then we do want to show it, and otherwise we don't. And this way, it's starting at 0, these values, seconds left will start at 0. That means that the thing will be off by default. Basically, if I just disabled the text element, the problem is the code would then turn it back on, because it'd be like, no, we've got seconds left, because our thing was ticking up rather than down. Yeah, and that just means that you start with it on rather than starting with it off. And you can get around it by setting one variable to equal the other on startup, but that feels a bit more messy to me. So I prefer to do it this way. It is timers. I do still slip up on them, as you've just seen. It's one of those just logic things that's tricky to get your head around. Okay, so let me just steal an antique and just check that works. Nope, doesn't work. God. Alright. I spent like 2 hours practicing this today. In total, I've probably spent 4 hours before today practicing this episode because the problem is I haven't had a lot of like sustained time to devote to this. So each time I practice it, then there's a long gap in which I forget everything I've done. I don't want to go back to the old method. I'm going to debug this one. So this is, oh, hang on. There's an obvious answer here, isn't there? I just didn't, after renaming that variable, I didn't set it again. I didn't, do the proper renaming and the, what's it called? Formally serialized as thing. I could have done that to retain that value, but because it's 2, I was like, no, I'll just remember that and I'll just enter it back in the inspector. I remembered the value just fine, but I didn't remember to actually do it. So, hoping this works this time. Hey, plus 200, plus 400, plus 600, plus 800. And, oh yeah, let me kill one of these at least. And now 54. Okay, that is working. And that feels like about the right amount of time, doesn't it? Okay. Yes, we will wrap it up there. That was 53 minutes, so that's a good amount of time. Yeah, I wasn't as wrong as I thought it was. I'm glad I didn't get messed up on timing logic again. It was just that I forgot something in the inspector. So yeah, I think this makes our score system feel way better. I care a lot more about score when I can see whether I'm beating my best ever score, when there are various different ways of getting score, when it relates to combat, not just stealing stuff. And when you're being shown how much you've recently got. If you get a really good group kill, it's going to feel really good to see a big number in that corner, which makes the game more fun.